I'm very pleased to be part of this conference, and I'd like to express my appreciation to the organizers for the invitation to speak. In this brief presentation, I intend to highlight three issues. The first would be plastic pollution as a potent threat to Africa's development. Secondly, how Africa can leverage the circular economy model to turn this threat into opportunities. And lastly, how multi-stakeholder partnerships are evolving and helping to achieve a circular economy for plastics in Africa. I think, Africa's potential to become the next growth engine of the world economy has been much talked about. The continent is endowed with some of the world's most valuable mineral resources, which has made it the go-to region for, industrial raw materials and commodity products. The continent has a population of about 1.3 billion people, which represents a global, a huge consumer market opportunity, and has also one of the world's youngest demographics. In spite of this, however, Africa's development potential has been under threat and will continue to be under threat for a long time to come. Across the continent, two of the biggest barriers to sustainable development are the widespread poverty, which is estimated at about 41% of the population living below the poverty line. The second factor is the growing waste pollution crisis. And as we all know, both of these factors significantly contribute to climate change risks. Despite not being able to cope with its current, volume of waste generation, the continent's waste volume is actually projected to triple by 2050, according to the World Bank. Now, over the years, plastic waste has remained a very visible and problematic component of solid waste pollution across Africa. The negative impact of this is clearly visible, and we see them in dump sites, we see them in the waterways, we see them along the beaches, as well as in the clogged drainages that trigger perennial flooding and associated damages in many areas, in many cities across the continent. But the average plastic collection and recycling rates, remain around 10%. And this very low performance has been because of weak policies and the lack of scaled infrastructure to collect and recycle plastics in particular. Now, without effective intervention, this situation is likely to get worse, given the projection that Africa, along with the Middle East, will outpace the rest of the world in plastic consumption volumes in the coming decades. Luckily, there is a clear consensus globally and also here in Africa that the current linear approach to consumption is not sustainable. Okay, hence there is the need to shift to a circular economy model. With this approach, there is active focus on designing out waste, using and reusing materials to keep them longer in the loop, as well as generating and replenishing natural systems to continue to sustain us and future generations. A shift to a circular economy requires us to make adjustments to our lifestyles as individuals, as corporates, as communities, and as governments. As has been demonstrated in some other regions, and we're increasingly seeing this reflected also here in Africa across many sectors. A circular economy model can convert Africa's overflowing waste, including plastic waste, into valuable resources, presenting opportunities for new investments, for job creation, for skills building and innovation, as well as enabling people across socioeconomic sectors to earn more income and create more wealth for themselves and for society. But shifting to a circular economy, will not come easy, because it will not be a personal journey. It will require shared understanding, commitment, and collaborative action by governments, businesses, civil society, citizens, and development partners to change the way we produce and consume goods, and also the way we manage the resulting waste. Now, there is not only a heightened awareness about the circular economy in Africa. We are also seeing increasing efforts at building collaborations and platforms at industry, at country, and at the regional level. Notable examples of this will include PETCO, which is an industry-led coalition in South Africa that is driving the recovery and recycling of PET packaging plastic. We also have, the National Plastic Action Partnerships, or the NPAPs, which is promoted by the World Economic Forum through the Global Plastic Action Partnership. Closely related to that is the Plastic Pact, which is also promoted by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And then we have, the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which is jointly promoted by a number of national governments in the region to be able to institutionalize the circular economy in the continent. Then lastly, we have, an NGO-led network of experts and organizations that is committed to advancing circularity across Africa, which is the Africa Circular Economy Network. It is only through such multi-stakeholder alignment and collaboration that we can really begin to make the challenging shift to a circular economy in a systemic manner. For instance, transforming plastic waste into industrial materials will require not only policies and regulations led by the government, it will also require product innovation and investment, which will naturally be led by the private sector. Now, all of these sectors working together will facilitate harmonization of goals and reduce the contending and conflicting interests that have stymied such progress in the past. An example of what is possible in Africa has been demonstrated in South Africa, actually, where the Food and Beverage Industry Coalition, PETCO, has for over 15 years worked with other stakeholders to foster a PET packaging recycling operation, which has become among the most successful models in the world today. South Africa's 2020 PET recycling rate of 45.7% compared favorably with the OECD countries. The PET recycling economy reported, to have contributed about 2.3% of national GDP in 2020, and it also supports about 60,000 sustainable jobs across South Africa. In fact, more than 500,000 tons of PET, have been recycled in South Africa over a 6-year period between 2015 and 2020. However, the challenge of plastic pollution goes beyond PET or even packaging plastics. All plastics count, whether they are packaging plastics, whether they are plastics for construction, whether they are plastics, for household items. We need to be able to have a process and a system that accounts for all plastics and ensure that they are properly, managed and also fed into the circular tube. A full-scale plastic circular economy will require more broad-based coalition across national and industrial sectors. And each sector has a unique role to play, and then each of their roles then become, mutually reinforcing in a collaborative context, and also helps to deliver the shared goal of a vibrant, sustainable, local plastic economy that supports industry, creates jobs, eliminates pollution, and of course, supports the global, efforts at managing, climate change risks. Another notable example of such, collaboration is the ongoing work by the Multi-Sector National Plastic Action Partnership, the NPAP, in Ghana. And this is jointly led by the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation in Ghana, together with the Global Plastic Action Partnership. The Ghana NPAP is actually developing a groundwork as well as a framework for sustainable management of plastic waste within a circular economic context that has a national scale in the country. Now, this effort will deliver a set of, strategic tools for financing, set of strategic tools, for unlocking the circular economy for plastics. And this will include a national plastic baseline data, an action roadmap, as well as a financing strategy to de-risk the plastic sector and attract investments. A number of sectors, or rather a number of factors, underscore the need for regional collaboration in the fight against plastic pollution. First, plastic pollution is not a local problem, like we all know. Plastic waste travel across boundaries freely through Africa's interconnected water bodies, causing various pollutions before eventually ending up in the oceans. Secondly, the most a compelling reason, like we will appreciate, is the fact that most countries in Africa have microeconomies that cannot support plastic recycling operations. Therefore, Africa needs a regional plastic recycling value chain, that is anchored on a hub and spoke model and enabled by policies and regulations like, regional standards for plastic waste, trade, and recycling. Thirdly, while artisanal or small and medium scale recycling by the informal sector is important for the economy, Africa needs skilled and globally competitive plastic recycling operations to be able to recover and reuse the accumulated stock, as well as the future supply of plastic waste. And lastly, on this point, without effective regional collaboration in these areas, each country will be left to ineffectively grapple with its own increasing pile of waste. And so the summary, the truth is, Africa's plastic pollution challenge is huge. It is beyond the current capacity of the continent to deal with, either at the country level or at the regional level. And in each country, there is no one sector that can deal with this challenge alone. Companies can do what they want to do within their own space. Governments may do what they want to do within their own space. But to be able to create a systemic solution, that can create the quantum change that we all want within the plastic waste pollution space, there needs to be a coming together of all stakeholders. And as we have seen, luckily, there are platforms that are already emerging. And I think this is what needs to be encouraged in the continent. Okay, governments need to make regulations in collaboration with the private sector, in collaboration with the social sector, in collaboration with development partners, so that such regulations can be fair and balanced and be progressive and be able to achieve the objective for which it is aimed to achieve. The private sector itself needs to be part of that conversation. So there is no contention or conflict between the policies that emanate from government and, of course, the sectors that would have to implement or comply by those policies. If we're able to achieve this kind of harmonious working relationship and ensure that, each sector is talking to each sector in the efforts to create a solution for the plastic waste pollution challenge, then, of course, we can begin to make progress. And, in conclusion, whether at industry, at country, or at regional level, the wisdom of multi-stakeholder collaboration in resolving the plastic pollution crisis is actually best summed up in an African proverb, which admonishes us to go far together rather than go fast alone. Thank you.